Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who has been waiting for me. And thank you very much for everyone joining in. If you're new to my live streams, these live streams are primarily for my viewers and subscribers and members to join the conversation, share their thoughts, participate, and also ask questions as well. I'll obviously try my best to answer all of your questions, obviously, and show all of your comments as much as possible. Tonight, I wanted to talk to you about the latest statements by the head of the Israeli Aman. Aman is the military intelligence directorate in Israel about the foreseeable future. Khamenei's statement, the supreme leader of Iran, and the CIA warning to Israel, very severe warning. Before I go into all of these subjects, there's been a very intense day today in Gaza, by the way, particularly in central Gaza. So the Palestinian resistance, they took down a couple of Merkavas. We haven't had many videos published yet, but the Palestinian resistance will most likely publish some of them very soon. Clearly, Israel's going nowhere with this genocide, apart from obviously killing people, innocent civilians, and destroying hospitals and banning aid. That's what they're good at. I also posted a video earlier on. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it after this live stream, where I spoke about Israel's criticism for Qatar. Now, Qatar is a very important country when it comes to the negotiations. They are the main country. They're the country that has Hamas's offices, political bureau. They're very important. They're not based in Egypt, but Egypt is also included because of their geographical link and their historical affiliation with Gaza and how important it is to them. So the Israeli economy minister, Nir Barakat, who was a very racist individual, by the way, this man. He was previously the mayor of Jerusalem, who implemented very racist policies against the Palestinians in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, all across Jerusalem. He's an ally of Netanyahu. He called them wolves in sheep's clothing and that they support terrorism. Clearly, Israel is not happy with the fact that Qatar is proposing what Hamas is proposing, wants for the Palestinian people. And it's clearly in favor of a genuine solution. But obviously, if you're a country like Israel, you don't want something that will give the Palestinians any sort of rights, right? You want supremacy, you want only your rights, and you don't want anything good for the Palestinian people. So they're not happy with that. I also spoke about this double standard, shameful hypocrisy of the NATO with their 100 billion US dollar support, euro, for Ukraine. Imagine supporting this corrupt government. Forget about the people, obviously, we're with the people. Obviously, some people misinterpret these things. We're with the people of Ukraine, with the people suffering everywhere. However, this government, this is a corrupt government with a president who supports Israel. I mean, how more blatant can it be, right? Someone calling another country an invader, and they're attacking your country and killing people, and at the same time supporting a genocidal country doing 1,000-fold of what Russia did in Ukraine, if you take the time scale, right? And they want to spend 100 billion euros from your money, of course, depending on where you live. If you're a NATO member, your money is going to this government that will most likely also take lots of it. You know, it made many people rich. Wars make many people rich. Don't forget that. And they also sell some of these weapons to other countries too. And this is only increasing tensions, destabilizing Europe. Europe that was supposed to be a continent that's stable, that has some respect for human rights. It's slowly just following really whatever the US says, US hegemony across the world, and their intention to take on and take control of Russia, regardless, obviously, of any of your views about the Russian government or the politics. We're talking about the grand scheme of things here and highlighting the hypocrisy. The countries that supposedly sympathize or claim to be sympathizing with the Ukrainian people and supporting Israel, a genocidal death cult at the same time. You couldn't get more hypocritical than that. If you want to talk about morality and human rights, you need to be consistent. If you are not morally consistent and support the same things for all people, then you're immoral. Simple. There's no other definition. And it just clearly highlights the levels of hypocrisy and how that support is not genuine, but it's all for the money and following Uncle Sam in its foreign policies and treating the world as their backyard, really. This is how Europe's been going. And obviously many people in Europe are not happy about that, but that's the situation. Which leads me to the topic that I want to talk to you about tonight. And I'll obviously open the space up for you after this. I won't take too long on you. Israel had an unprecedented attack on this consulate. So we've had multiple reports day by day. It turned out that they actually assassinated 8 people who are Iranian, belonging to the IRGC, albeit in a consulate, right? It's supposed to be protected by the Geneva Convention, by international law. But hey, it's Israel, when did they respect international law? And they killed this senior figure. Iran obviously said they will respond. Many of them said they will respond. So the foreign minister said they will respond. The supreme leader said they will respond. And the president said they will respond. The president yesterday, and I quoted him, he said that the resistance will respond. Khamenei, the supreme leader, he said today Netanyahu will be slapped. This is exactly what he said. Raisi, the president, said that the men of the resistance will support. So it could come from any of the resistance movements that are supported and backed by Iran. Now, the CIA is warning Israel, saying that there is an imminent attack within 48 hours. A former senior CIA official who operated in the Middle East, Ralph Goff, or Joff, excuse me if I mispronounced it, he said that Israel's strike was reckless. In his words, this CIA official, senior official who operated in the Middle East, he called Israel's strike on this consulate in Syria reckless, adding that it will only result in escalation by Iran and its proxies. On the other hand, Dana Stroul, the Pentagon's former top Middle East policy official, she warned that the strike was a, quote, significant escalation and risks tipping an already volatile, unstable region into full-scale war. The question is, if you have these people, these officials who are top-ranking, albeit in previous positions, right? Some of them are no longer serving, but clearly when they're no longer serving, they have a bit more freedom and liberty to speak and criticize what their government is doing. Why is the government still supporting Israel? Still supporting them? Are you careless about what the people who are professionals in their field saying, similar to the Israeli government, disregarding the previous head of the Mossad, for example, previous senior figures in Amman, previous senior figures in the security and military establishment. Why are you disregarding them? It's war profiteering, military-industrial complex. So now the CIA is warning within 48 hours. And we also had two very interesting statements coming from Israel. The serving head of the Amman, which is the IDF Military Intelligence Directorate, one of the most important intelligence bodies in Israel, establishments. You have the Mossad, the Shabak, and the Amman. He said, the worst is not behind us. The worst is not behind us. He was quoted in Ma'arif saying, I reiterated more than once, more than twice, that the worst is yet to come. Yet you still have Benjamin Netanyahu and the war cabinet and the Israeli government pushing ahead with this genocide. Now throwing blows at one of the main mediators, Qatar, who always played a big role in de-escalating. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Qatar historically played a very vital role in de-escalating, in reaching deals between Israel and Hamas by Israeli approval, and they have representatives who are permanent in Gaza. They're always there in Gaza. And they give and take. They obviously Israel's on an ongoing relationship with them, and now they want to take them out. What do you not want to talk then? I mean, ideally, the situation would be all okay. You know, when you have a very tense situation, it's difficult to talk to your enemies. But in an ideal world, and I know we don't live in an ideal world, you sit down with your enemies and you talk to them. You talk to Hamas, you make peace with your enemies, you don't make peace with your friends. But this government, they're so stubborn, so arrogant, so entitled, that they don't want even a country that is actually there for the Palestinian people as well, not just the Israeli people. And it doesn't look like they're going anywhere. They sent a delegation to Egypt, but it doesn't look like they're going to go anywhere. On the other hand, we also had another statement from Hagari. Hagari, who is the IDF spokesperson. He said, we have increased our defense capabilities and prepared fighter jets to carry out attacks in case of any developments. We are monitoring all our enemies and not just Hamas. So clearly they're worried. And you have many reports and analysts saying Israel is worried from inside of Israel, waiting for Iran's response. It's like, did you not expect that? And did you think by assassinating this person, you will stop them acting against you? It's bizarre. They've assassinated so many people, so many senior figures in the Palestinian resistance, in Hezbollah, in other countries too. Yet they come out stronger. They emerge more persistent, right? More keen on continuing their battle with Israel instead of dealing with the root cause of the problem and once and for all implementing a solution that provides equality for the Palestinian people. But that's obviously not what they were established for, and that's not the ideological basis that they were established upon. Zionism clearly proved that it's a violent, expansionist, neo-colonialist, supremacist, racist ideology that is non-compatible with humanity, is definitely not compatible as any form of ideology that can run any country, really. You're talking about the 21st century. Yet you have, countries calling themselves democracies and beacons of democracies, right, and human rights and equality, supporting this country. On the other hand, we had, slightly good news from Gaza. We had some solar and medical aid trucks entering the northern part of Gaza, particularly to Kamal Udwan and Al Ma'madan hospitals, both of which were heavily bombed and attacked, and many people were killed in them. If you recall, Al Ma'madan was that hospital where they, during the early days of this genocide, dropped a JDAM bomb on, and they tried to blame the resistance, killing 600 innocent civilians. If you recall, those days, they were horrible. And back then, the management, we still have horrible days. Look at what they've done in Shifa. The horror stories are still going out. But they had a press conference at the time with the bodies around them. It's like a scene that you haven't seen in any horror movie. But they've at least got some sort of basic aid, basic solar and medical equipment trucks entering and supporting them. Kamal Udwan, at one point, that was about 4 months ago, it was the only remaining hospital in Gaza that had a pharmacy next to it. What did Israel do? They went with their bulldozers, ran over bodies that were in tents outside of the hospital next to the pharmacy and destroyed the pharmacy. And you have people questioning if it's a genocide or if it's not a genocide. But that's what's happening. So clearly things are escalating. The question is it going to be imminent? Is it going to be within 48 hours? It's not necessarily going to be the case. However, when it came to, if we take as an example, Hezbollah, when we've had targeted assassinations, for example, for Al-Aruri and for some of their own leaders earlier during, following the 7th and 8th of October, they entered obviously on the 8th of October, their retaliation came several days after. So they targeted the Northern Air Command base. Israel has two. Then they targeted one of the central commands for the IDF in Safad. The other one was in Har Miron Mount. So Iran could potentially have something within 48 hours. But the CIA is clearly seeing something going on. And they're threatening Iran not to attack their bases, by the way. There was another threat from the US against Iran not to attack their bases and saying it's not related to us. It was Israel. And obviously you have Israel saying, oh no, it's not a consulate, right? It's a base for the IRGC planning things against us. They can depict it and describe it as they wish, really. Although so many diplomatic missions and embassies, they're hubs for intelligence agencies, they're hubs for people from within the military. But when it comes to Iran, or when it comes to a country that they don't like, the hypocrisy starts to show. Like we stated many times, if a European country had a consulate attacked like that, you'd have condemnations left, right, and center and considering military action immediately. Imagine the Palestinians did to any Israeli hospital what Israel did to Palestinian hospitals. Where would we be in this position? Would you hear the silence and the spinning and calling it an operation rather than a barbaric terrorist massacre? Highlights the hypocrisy, really. And that was the main thing. And now I'll open the space up for all of you for your questions and comments. Obviously, apologies in advance if I'm unable to reach all of them, but I will do my best. Firstly, thank you, Irma. Thank you, Idil Hussein. And who else do we have? We have also Gibran Khadr and John Doe. Thank you so much. And Amir Hopkins, thank you very, very much for your super thanks. I really appreciate them, and they support my work massively. You need to understand that. You people are as much support as the work that I'm doing, really, all of you, even everyone listening. It's very important. So I really appreciate that, and thank you very, very much. So let's go to John Doe. John Doe said, Salam, Brother Mahmoud, how will the resistance capacities be in future after Iran's aggression by Israel? Interesting question. And then you added, will capacity be increased and improved by Iran's wish to punish Israel? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Marhaba Paris, Marrakesh. Allahu Akbar. Okay. Well, a couple of things. When it comes to Iran, well, you know, there's no denying that they are a massive part in all of this, a massive part in the coordination, a massive part in the support, a massive part in all of the actions that are being taken by the Palestinian resistance and by the resistance groups. This coordination, this support on all levels really wouldn't have happened without Iran. Yet, some people still criticize Iran, and they still tell you, obviously criticize, what's the problem? There's no problem criticizing Iran, criticizing their government and how they rule and whatever you want to criticize, like the religious interpretation, whatever it is, criticize, fine. But when it comes to their support for Palestine, clearly this support is unconditional. Let's just clarify that and establish it, and I will obviously reach that. They supported Palestine before there was Hamas. They supported Palestine before there was PIJ. It was Yasser Arafat and Fatah movement, which is a national movement that's more secular, right? And Iran is clearly, blatantly a religious country. You can almost call it a theocracy, democracy. And ever since their revolution in 1979, one of their main slogans was Palestine. Why would they do that? They would have made life easier for themselves, if they didn't take this approach. Do you think the whole world, as in when we say world, do you think they would have faced this level of hostility from the US, from the UK, from France, from EU states, and from Israel itself, if they didn't take this position? Why did they have to take it? Clearly, it's a position that gets you in trouble internationally. I mean, people who speak are in trouble. Imagine you as a country. Why did you have to take this position? Right? Why did you have to do? Clearly, and they face consequences. They face pressure. They face sanctions. They face lots of problems. And at a state level, this is not something to be taken lightly. So they've sacrificed for it. So their position is very genuine. That's why Israel doesn't like them. That's why the US constantly criticizes them, right? And other countries as well. It's because they have a very firm position. Let's just establish that. In terms of capacities, they already support. They support with whatever they can, with escalation or without escalation. Will it increase by their will to punish? They most likely already have the means that they need to retaliate. It's not like they're going to, deliver something extraordinary, right? I mean, Hezbollah, they haven't used their most serious arsenal yet. The Ansarullah in Yemen, they still have capacities. Iraq, look how many strategic places they already hit. The question is, what level are we talking about? And is it going to be more to do with quality or quantity? But they have the capacity. What we will most likely expect, in my opinion, is the level, or if they're able to come up with something very significant, like targeting a very important person in Israel. This is my analysis. I think personally it would probably be something very strategic and very intense. That's John Doe. And let's go back to Abdul Qadir. How long until we have a free Palestine, your estimate? Look, I previously stated, and I will state again, Israel as we know it ended on the 7th of October, and we're seeing the end of it. We're witnessing the end of it. This doesn't mean that it's a few days or months or even years, right? But Israel's been living on overtime, really. It's like if you have a football match, they're in the 95th minute, 96th minute even. So the level of hit that they got, the psychological effect that it had on the people in Israel, the military humiliation and defeat. And I know some of you might argue with me. It's like, what do you mean military humiliation and defeat when Gaza is in ruins? You judge a military campaign by the objectives and whether those objectives are achieved, have been achieved, or are on their way to be achieved anytime soon or not. Israel's objectives for the war, demolishing Hamas, Gaza not being a threat again, and them having full security control. Do they have any of the above? 6 months into this genocide, and using all of the firepower that you can imagine, bar nuclear weapons that they can't use because it will be affecting them as well. Otherwise, they would have nuked Gaza and they would have slaughtered 1 million people. So you have that. Then you have their international position. It's the worst position in their history. Allies, long-term allies of Israel, stopping arming Israel, stopping the support. Countries that historically always supported Israel militarily, diplomatically, politically, no longer do this. An establishment in the form of the US government that is the enabler of this, and that's worse than Israel for enabling it, having criticism against Israel. So don't think they'll reach 2030. That's my estimate. Let's go to the next one. And thank you for everyone joining me as and when, and who are contributing and sending messages as well. Franny, there's some divine uncovering going on with this. There has to be, because they're not stupid. They genuinely can't see it. I believe that there's divine intervention, if you ask me, as a believer. However, I also think what happens doesn't just happen by divine intervention and faith, obviously, which as a believer I firmly believe, but by meticulous planning and action and activity. And many of the things that happened and are happening, even if you just take it from an activism perspective, from people talking, from people like yourselves, saying things, posting things, educating other people, speaking with them, raising awareness, debating. All of that requires action from you. And then there's obviously, absolutely, I totally agree with you, by the way. Gibran Khadr, how much longer can the king of Jordan al-Sisi stay in power before the people overthrow them finally? Well, it's more tense in Jordan than in Egypt. And if there was any likelihood of this happening, I mean, look, no one expected the Arab Spring at the time. even where it started with Muhammad Bouazizi, who set himself alight because of the economic situation and the police state at that time, and then that being followed by other Arab countries and Egypt, that was historically such a massive police state where if you had 1,000 people protesting, you'd have 5,000 police officers surrounding them. No one expected that. There could be something. There are reasons for it. It's not like there aren't any reasons. However, what I would say is that these governments mastered the art of manipulation and also diffusing and taking fires down. They have experience with that. They will push for propaganda to justify their positions. But what's for sure is in some of these countries, and not all of them, by the way, because not all of the Arab populations have the same sympathy, by the way. Not everyone. There's levels to it. Like, for example, look at Yemen. Let me give you an example. Look at the Ansarullah movement. That's a representation of the will of the people. The biggest protests across the world for Palestine are in Yemen, a country that's poverty-stricken, that just got out of a bloody war. They just reached a deal with Saudi Arabia after Iran brokered the deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and therefore that led to reconciliation process between Ansarullah and Saudi Arabia. Yet the people go out and support in their millions. You don't see millions in all of the Arab countries. As a matter of fact, you don't see protests in some Arab countries. The protests in Europe from European population, forget about the immigration population, right, in Europe, from the population in some countries, in European countries or in the US, is sometimes bigger than some Arab countries. And that's to do with many reasons, by the way. But it depends on the intensity and how far. Like we've seen very intense days in Jordan, very, very tense days in Jordan. And the government is finding it difficult. And the king. Egypt also, you had a lot of activity as well. But Egypt, if you compare it to Jordan, you know, the military is so powerful. It controls almost every aspect of life in Egypt. The military in Egypt controls the government. The president is the army. The economy. They have their own economy. For people who don't understand how Egypt runs, by the way, the army has companies, has factories, manufacturing. They deal with agriculture. They deal with property development. It's massive there. So to take that whole system, that's if you're talking about the whole government, it's not a simple task, but not to say that it's impossible, obviously. Bing swings, does Iran have nuclear weapons like Israel? No, not that they declare. They definitely have nuclear projects. They have the capacity to have nuclear weapons from their nuclear projects. But they never stated that their intention was to reach nuclear weapons. As a matter of fact, even their supreme leader said it's like against the religion, according to him, to have nuclear weapons because they're destructive for humanity. This is what Iran said. Yet you have Israel has nuclear weapons, apparently 300 nuclear warheads, threatening to use them, and no one's saying anything about them. That's fine. And the country is criticizing Iran for striving to have a nuclear energy. The US has 7,000 warheads. What Israel as well? Shady nuclear project that was revealed by an Israeli, by the way, Mordechai Vanunu. Typical arrogant, entitled supremacist approach, right? You can't have it, but I can have it. Muna Nana, hello all. Was there no warning for this live? Didn't see it on the community tab and just caught this by accident. I posted it on my community tab. You might have missed it on the feed. I'm not sure that, because sometimes, you know, for some reason, people don't see my updates. I've had these reports before. So the best way is to directly go to my channel. Obviously, make sure you keep your notifications and check your subscription, by the way, because I also had report of people being unsubscribed for some mysterious reason. And yeah, make sure that you check on my channel directly. It was, I notified about 5-6 hours ago, by the way. I'm trying to give you as much time as possible because I know some of you like to have prior knowledge of it. 6 E's. I wish there was an Israeli embassy in Vancouver so I could stand outside with a Palestinian flag. Look, it's enough if you support with whatever you can, really. But you should be glad that there's no Palestinian, there's no Israeli embassy there. Hopefully we'll have a Palestinian embassy in Vancouver one day. And thank you again for Fabian, everyone greeting and coming in, and everyone joining us as well. Reiki Mastering Life. This is very important. President Dwight Eisenhower's most famous speech included, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." You know, this military-industrial complex is one of the most dangerous, real dangerous lobbies that we have in the world. These people profiteer from blood, and they're very dangerous. I even included a chapter about the military-industrial complex in my book, Promoting a One-State Solution. And the fact that the military-industrial complex has one interest, having more wars, because more wars means more weapons, regardless of the people who get killed. They don't care. The greed and inhumanity of these people is beyond comprehension. And I even had a counter argument to the military-industrial complex. So let's say it's very dangerous, right? And people are making money from wars. So that we're not deemed to be as people who are against, for example, people making money. Why not? People, good, make business, make money. Why not? Become a billionaire, whatever you want. However, how about you transfer the funds of the military-industrial complex to research and development? You know what? Take the tax money, okay? Take my tax money and go and do some research and development and support space exploration, or God forbid, projects to feed the needy and the poor across the world. And you know what? Start with 10% of the budget for the military-industrial complex. If you start with 10% of the military-industrial complex budget, if you take the US alone, you will feed the world population from now up until 2100. And then, I don't know, help the technology, exploration, whatever it is, instead of killing people. Seriously. And it's there's a lethal combination, by the way. It's not just the military-industrial complex. So look at wars. Obviously, there's not just the military-industrial complex. There's other geopolitical and economic reasons. So some of them will be financially motivated, like Israel now, and you have the gas interests as well. They handed out gas exploration contracts on the 24th, if I recall correctly, of October. Imagine that you're in the middle of the worst attack in your history, and all you're concerned about is handing contracts for gas exploration off the shores of Gaza? Imagine. But let's take wars, right? You have all of that money for the military industrial complex. That's not just killing foreigners, by the way, it's killing your own people. You're using your own people, your own young population, young men mainly, as cannon fodder for your greed, sending them to die for your greed and your money. And those who, obviously, you have people dying, getting killed. And then you have people being amputated and disabilities. And then you have people with PTSD on what? On medication for life, supporting the pharma cartel, supporting the pharmaceutical, because you're prescribed for life. In the US, there was a statistic in 2019 or 2020, 22 army veterans commit suicide every day. That's your population. That's your people. If you want to talk about your people, that's why we constantly say it's also beyond other nations. There is a racist element to it. Absolutely. But it's also related to greed, because the same governments that support what's happening, they support Israel, they're careless of their people. What does the US government care about the American people? There's whole towns and cities in the US full of homeless people. Does the British government care about the British people? You have multimillionaires on top. Again, not to criticize people who are millionaires. Be a millionaire. صحتين, as we say in Arabic. Be a millionaire. Enjoy. But not at the expense of people. Not by not having the budget for basic things, yet this enormous, gigantic budget for wars. You have the money for wars. You have this money tree, magic money tree for wars and for nuclear weapons, but you don't have money for people, for healthcare, for insurance, for what is this? To have, I don't know, a universal basic income or something, right? Lutfi Shahad is saying, just to let you know, something's wrong with this live stream. You freeze, won't let me until you close YouTube and restart it again. If anyone, that's one report. It could potentially be, by the way, browser related or cookies and stuff like that, because I haven't heard it from someone else. But sometimes that does tend to happen with live streams. Like I will wait for a bit up until the live stream is going. It will tell me here that I'm live, and then you will have to wait for a bit. That's usually how it is with live streams, by the way. But sometimes you do kind of have other issues. TT, democracy promotion has always been a load of B by the West. Yes, I agree. Because look at their democracy promotion in Iraq, democracy promotion in Afghanistan, democracy on tanks. And the same countries that tell you about promoting democracy, they are tied with dystopian regimes across the world. As a matter of fact, they fought democracies. Take Gaza, for example. Gaza is a democracy. Hamas won democratic elections that were monitored by Jimmy Carter, the previous US president, who said, through his organization that monitored them, personally, that they were the most democratic elections in the Arab states' history. But because they came with Hamas, that doesn't want to recognize Israel's right to occupy Palestine, that doesn't want to give up Palestinian rights, that doesn't want to completely align itself with imperial interests, they're against it. I have another question. Clara, it's being reported UAE have cut diplomatic ties with Israel. Is this true, please? Not to my knowledge. I haven't heard that's the case. I don't think they will. Mind you, they have their disagreements with Israel and criticism, although they have a peace treaty with them. But I don't think it has reached a stage where they cut ties with them. Julio Acosta, Mahmoud brother, so Iran will retaliate against Israel in the 48 hours? If so, I support it. Not only Iran, but also all resistance. I hope Palestinians get the freedom and the state that they deserve. It's CIA's warning for Israel that there is an imminent attack within 48 hours. Israel preparing, and I quoted them if you go back to the beginning of the live stream after we finish. It's not that Iran said so within 48 hours. Iran said we will retaliate, but they did not specify exactly when. Amir Hopkins, thank you so much, and Khalid Razak as well for your supers. Amir Hopkins is saying, have you seen the new UK spokesman for ex-Labour Friends of Israel with LFI and APAC in the US? Is a change of policy possible before the elections? Look, the UK, all of these changes before the elections, they're a tactic. They're pivot. They're not a change of policy. They're worried about their seats, about their interests, about them staying in power, and they're career politicians. Like if you take the UK, for example, 95, if not more, % of them are career politicians. They're only concerned about themselves. Labour as a party, it's rotten from the core. Same as the Conservatives, same as the Lib Dems. There's an argument about other political parties, but the 2-3-way party system, it's elected dictatorship, really. And in many cases, you will see political parties in many Western countries that describe themselves as leftist or right, implementing the same policies as, let's say, a leftist party in the UK or in Canada or whatever. They have the same policies as a right-wing, supposedly right-wing government in another, for example, Western country. That's why, from my perspective, I obviously never identify as left or right. I don't like the identification because it's misleading. To me, and I think that's what the focus should be on, is the core principles and policies that are promoted, regardless of those parties or what they label themselves as. But they have a lot of manipulation before the elections, and once they have and they stay in power, they will have the same thing. Mind you, there is pressure. Like there was this report in the UK with this leaked conversation from one of the Tories, I think, about 600 legal experts telling the UK government that what Israel's doing is a crime against humanity and you can't support them. Now, regardless of how aligned you are with Israel, how much you support them, there's so much you can do that's above the law, or that's illegal. Now, in many cases, governments have done and do things that are illegal. Never think the government is a representation of legality or something legal. They do illegal things on an ongoing basis. That's why when you have, for example, legal cases between a human rights body, for example, or personal legal feuds between people and a government policy, individual cases, you will see the people winning over the government. What did the government know that it's illegal? They know it's illegal, but they go ahead still because they're unchallenged. Why? Because when you want to go and take a state to a legal court, you need to have some sort of resources. They have all of the money in the world, and you might be poor. You might not have enough money or enough to pay a lawyer, right, or a firm for a couple of cases, unless you're backed by money. That's why it's very corrupt. ABCDY, your streams are always different times. They're not always in different times, but there's a time frame, really, usually between 9 to 10. I do them when is most suitable, depending on my schedule, because I have other recordings as well. I have video recordings, and I record also podcasts that I publish at a later date. So that's why I have different times, but obviously that's why I try and notify you earlier on. Okay, let's go to Abdul Haq. Question: will the AJ now be banned in the West? There is no indication that they will be banned in the West. And mind you, Israel might do a U-turn. They previously said a lot of things about Al Jazeera. They don't like Al Jazeera or free journalism, right? Even though Al Jazeera is so restricted in Israel, you need to understand, like they wouldn't publish 90% of what they actually know or what actually can do, because it goes through approval of the Israeli military censorship. It needs to have approval. Even if you write an article, it needs to be approved before it goes ahead. But they have passed the law that didn't specifically speak about Al Jazeera, but spoke about any journalism organization, news agency that can pose a threat or can harm Israel's security. So that can include Al Jazeera and other networks as well. They banned Al Mayadeen previously before this law passed. So they might do a U-turn. They might use it as leverage against Qatar to potentially put pressure on Hamas to submit to Israel's request. But there's nothing of the sort in Western countries yet. So, yeah, I hope that clarifies. Richard Clark, can you please place a support button next to share and save ETC? I'm not sure where to go to make contribution. Well, if you're talking about supers, it's dictated by YouTube with the S logo below on the chat. And if you want to make contribution, you can do it on my website as well directly, mahmoudod.com. But the form that it shows here, it's obviously controlled by YouTube. Damas, will Iran attack an Israeli embassy? That could be. They did attack Israeli embassies before. But that could potentially put them in a difficult situation with the hosting nation. So they will take that into consideration. Kate, have UAE cut humanitarian aid to Israel, or are they only giving lip service to halt diplomatic coordination with Israel? So far, we've seen no proof that they actually stopped it. There's obviously increasing protests, so they might say anything to make it look like they're not really. But yeah, they'll say anything to save face, but then they can continue supporting Israel. Khadija, thank you very much for your super. You said, thank you, Mahmoud, for being here. For the world, many wouldn't know the truth. Thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much. And thank you for your support. Beverly West, the best outcome is one state because two states, Israel would never agree to a Palestinian having a military. Yes, because they always said that they would have, even if you had a Palestinian state, it would need to be a demilitarized state with overall control, overall security control by Israel. That's why it's impossible. And then again, another thing, why would they worry about the Palestinians having a military? If everything is okay and they have a peace treaty, why would that worry them? Because they know that this peace treaty is not complete and does not include all of the historical rights of the Palestinian people, primarily the right for return of Palestinian refugees. That's why. And because they know that there will still be a reason for the Palestinians to fight them, because there is no justice, no real justice, just a coating, then they would worry about them having a military. Otherwise, how many countries across the world have peace treaties, are in good relations, and both of them have very strong militaries and coordinate with each other and have economic ties? But they would worry because they don't want to give the Palestinians all of their rights. And thank you so much for everyone else for your kind comments and input. Let's try and see if you have any more questions before we wrap up. Nowbe's desk, sorry, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. What exactly is the role of Saudi Arabia MBS with regards to Palestine situation? I mean, where are the Muslims in Saudi? Where are its scholars? Good question. Good question. Well, to thoroughly understand the role of Saudi Arabia when it comes to Israel, you need to go back to the roots of the establishment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, particularly the role that Al Saud's founders had and their relationships with the British Empire at the time, and their guarantee for the British Empire that they agree to a nation state for the Jewish people in Israel. There's a letter in Arabic that was published and that you can find it online from the founder of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the British Empire, representative of the British Empire, I forgot who the person exactly was, where the British were asking them to confirm that they're happy with them giving a nation state to the Jewish people in the land of Palestine, regardless of how it was sold at the time, whether a partial state or a whole state, whatever it is. But in that letter, the founder confirmed to this representative that for the 1,000th time, I confirm that we agree for the Jewish people and having a nation state in Palestine. Contrary, for example, to one of the last Ottoman sultans, Sultan Abdul Hamid al-Thani, Abdul Hamid II, when the Zionist movement went to him asking, before the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, asking him for permission for the Jewish people to have a state in Palestine, including massive financial support. They were doing badly economically, the Ottoman Empire at the time. And they proposed many things, including taking away debt, supporting with lots of money. And his response at the time was, I don't own Palestine. Palestine belongs to the people. And therefore, I'm unable to provide such an agreement. Obviously, he went away, obviously, and then you had the Ottoman Empire collapsing. And obviously Saudi guaranteed. Now, so the scholars in Saudi Arabia, they have a very important role. It's been shaken with the arrival of MBS, who's introducing different things in Saudi Arabia that not many people like, who are very traditional, so to speak. And I wouldn't say religious here, because religion in many cases is mixed with traditions and with habits rather than the actual religion itself. But they still play a very important role. And if you listen to some of these scholars in Saudi Arabia, you will hear them speaking against the Palestinian resistance, blatantly, saying that you cannot support the Palestinian resistance. They don't have good interpretations of the religion. And you will even have some scholars in Saudi Arabia promoting Zionism. Not blatantly, but saying that, Israel belongs to the Jewish people. Similarly to how some Christians believe that they're the chosen people and they need to be in that land. They work hard to promote it in Muslim nations, and you'll have some people playing ball. They'll start arguing how many times was Israel mentioned in the Quran, despite the fact that Bani Israel are mentioned in the Quran, the sons of Israel, not Israel as a state. And they will also argue that Palestine is not mentioned in the Quran as Palestine. What does that have to do with anything? Al-Aqsa is mentioned in the Quran, right? And Jerusalem was the first direction of prayer for Muslim people before it became Mecca, Al-Kaaba. So that plays a very big part. And then obviously you have the state itself. It's not like you have freedom in Saudi Arabia or political diversity. You have a one-man rule. And you have the media supporting them. Al Arabiya, which is one of the main news networks in Saudi Arabia. If you listen to them, it's as if Israel is speaking sometimes. Fatima saying, if Hamas wins, Hummus, he said, I assume mean Hamas, Arab dictators will be gone. The Arab dictators, that's a valid point, because if it wasn't for Arab complicity, and I'm talking about Arab governments and state-level complicity, Israel wouldn't have dared doing what it does, because they know there would be repercussions. The majority of the Arab countries are not even using 20% of their leverage to try and stop this genocide, whether with Israel or with the US that's enabling the genocide. And again, some people think, go to war. You don't have to go to war to try and stop something. Use political leverage, use financial leverage. But they have such a massive hold on them, like the King Faisal, for example, the late King Faisal, who was assassinated later on, a very suspicious assassination that was most likely orchestrated in Washington. He used oil. He had an oil embargo after the 1973 war. and he spoke highly about Palestine and Al-Aqsa. And oil prices were soaring in the US. It put them in a very difficult position. Stop supporting, or we will continue this embargo. Then they realized they have a problem. They got rid of him through a very shady assassination. And the official narration of this assassination is that there's a man who was somewhat close to the royal family, passed through without checks and against the protocols somehow. Clearly, it was orchestrated with weapons next to the king, and he shot him and he killed him. And after that, they never used oil as leverage. So it was clearly orchestrated. And the following kings, people in power, they were obviously threatened. Don't dare use that, or you'll face the same fate. Again, that's not something that I have proof of. We have proof of the assassination and the historical facts that happened, but not the fact that it was orchestrated. But, analyzing, you need to read between the lines to try and find the truth here, because no one's going to tell you, oh, I assassinated him because he had an embargo on me. And they most likely know it to this day. And don't forget how many American bases you have in Saudi Arabia. Salam Stusi, Iran have many Jews, they don't hit the full country. I assume you mean Israel. And I would argue that they're careless of them. They don't care. Israel's playing, ladies and gentlemen, with the Jewish card. It's a facade. Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. Yeah, you have Zion, right? And the love for the land of Israel, etc. But Zionism as an ideology is using Judaism as a front. And then they had the mix as an ideology between ethnicity and religion. They wanted to ethnicize Judaism so that Judaism is linked to a land. Therefore, when you criticize that land or its owners or its country or policies or whatever, you're deemed as anti that religion. It's a very malicious attempt that they still try to this day to sell. And any Jew who opposes them, and there are many, and Lord knows they're growing as well, they will start telling them you're a self-hating Jew, or you're an anti-Semite, or you're this, or you're that. Plus, look at Israel is in Israel. Does Israel care about its own population? Israel is the worst and most dangerous place for Jewish people to be in. It's the place with the highest death rate for Jewish people. It's the most dangerous place. They're under imminent threat, and they're showing a very bad image by saying we speak in the name of Judaism, similarly to how an organization who speaks in the name of Christianity and then commits atrocities, or an organization that speaks on behalf of Islam and commits atrocities. They give a bad name to that religion, not to obviously sensible people who can see things clearly like we do. At least we hope we do, right? Not to kind of try and... But it's clear. And we always note here that they use this. It's a very malicious attempt. And you have many countries playing ball with them. Swatros is saying Egypt profiting from Palestinian suffering. As I heard, they are charging refugees around $10,000 to enter Egypt. I heard similar reports. Is that systematic? Is it coming from the top? Is it coming from corrupt people? I'm not sure, but it's bad regardless. The fact that something like that is happening is awful. And some of the organizations who were asked to pay or some people who are asked to pay to potentially leave, they wouldn't say, because they don't want to put themselves in trouble. And also, you need to understand, people try and capitalize during crisis. That's unfortunately the truth. Like Hamas is fighting a vicious battle internally as well, with some people trying to get a hold of the aid and resell it at very high prices. Israel, their assassination of some of these police officers who were in Al-Shifa, some of them were people in charge of not letting that happen and fighting against it. Warlords and people profiteering from war. Unfortunately, that happens inside of Gaza. And Hamas was obviously battling that. Then Israel goes and assassinates them because they want to give the aid to people who are allied with them and arm them for them to distribute it and undermine Hamas, according to Israel. And then taking it, because obviously Israel does it step by step, you know, they have a strategy. Then they can potentially take over the control of Gaza, because it starts with small responsibilities and then it grows. But Hamas is still in control of Gaza and the Palestinian resistance. Wesley Donison, imagine if all that engineering prowess were employed for devices that do useful things for humanity. Absolutely. I assume that's linked to the military-industrial complex, the debate and discussion that we were having. Absolutely. Things that were beneficial. You can still have that money. People can still contribute through tax, right? But that tax has return on them, not a destructive effect on humanity, like what we're seeing at the moment. Okay, let's see if we have some more questions before we wrap up. Patricia saying the Orthodox Jews are having a position against conscription. Yes, they are in Israel. Vivette Shantia, hi Mahmoud, is it true that Iran has stopped supplying the Houthis with weapons as US claim? No, that's not true. This is another attempt from the US and from Israel to cause division and stir problems between the resistance allies. You previously had the reports that, so you see the pattern, then you can read between the lines and understand what's happening. They started saying that Hamas has problems with Qatar over a month ago. Then we had the reports that Qatar is expelling Hamas from Qatar. Why? To stir division between them and to bring Qatar closer to Israel in the negotiations and not having a stance that is actually good for the Palestinian people. Now they're taking an official stance against Qatar. So it didn't work before. Now you're taking a stance against them. Same thing with Iran and the Houthis. But do you think you can fool people nowadays? You can't fool people. And that was the final question. And we'll wrap it up there. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining me. Thank you very much for everyone contributing. I really appreciate you. And your contributions support my work. And thank you for contributing. It's very important. Don't underestimate anything of which that you do. Obviously, it's very, very important and valuable. And we'll finish it there. Hopefully tomorrow, and you're welcome, everyone, as well. I will hopefully update you tomorrow. Again, for any of you who don't see the notifications, just make sure they're on, obviously, and that you're still subscribed, because we have, again, I've had reports. But if you can't see any notifications, go to my channel directly through the community tab, or in the live section. You have sections next to videos, live, shorts, community. Then you can see exactly what's happening, so that you know you know the exact times of the streams, and obviously if I have any video, you will see it as and when. Thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of your evening or day depending on where you are, and I will see you soon in the next video. Take care.